I want to acknowledge that those who have been campaigning for this bill in and outside of here are absolutely well motivated. Many have watched a loved one die in great discomfort, even agony, and are informed by grief, and understandably they don't want that for their loved ones or for themselves. I also want to acknowledge that they're often driven by choice and autonomy, which are honourable virtues. Facing death when illness threatens to remove bodily or cognitive control can be daunting. And as I think, as the noble Lady Baroness Prentice so vividly and movingly described earlier, you can feel how people would want to therefore assert control at the end of their life. So I acknowledge that absolutely. But I want to refute something that keeps regularly being thrown out, this accusation that those of us who raise concerns about the bill don't care about those campaigners, and that we have never or are not listening to the terminally ill. To note, the terminally ill are not an undifferentiated identity group with a fixed view. We sadly will all know people who are terminally ill now, and I can tell you those I know find politicians' enthusiasm for assisted dying, in preference to an energy going into palliative care or hospices, makes them feel like a burden, a demoralised, and they're demoralised and dispirited. It does seem to me that some people are determined to imply or undermine the motivations of those of us who put amendments in, as though we're all part of some malign Machiavellian plot. I mean, media reports this week, and by the way, credit to Dignity in Dying. I mean, they've got good comms and PR. I mean, their media work is second to none. But the media this week said that the Lords should hang our heads in shame. I'd just like to say we should actually hold our heads up high, because it's been fashionable in politics at the moment to look the other way, see no evil, hear no evil, and so on. But we were charged with a huge task, a heavy responsibility. If there was to be a law that would mean that the state and doctors could help end the lives of the terminally ill, how could we pass that law without creating recklessly unsafe legislation? This has not been some tactical coup, as the noble Lady Baroness Hunter implied. The task was to scrutinise the longest private members' bill on record. And by the way, all without guidance from government ministers beyond the narrow technical comments on legal and operational workability, not safety. Also, we were charged with the task of scrutiny, not just by our intrinsic role here, but because MPs in the elected House told us they were relying on our House to fix a flawed bill. And conversely to the point made by the noble Lady Baroness Gerarda earlier, what's become obvious is that actually the people who are kind of not grounded in reality, those who support the abstract ideals of the sponsors, but once amendments try and pin down the practical specific mechanisms of the bill about how an assisted dying service would operate on the ground, it exposes worrying implications and unintended consequences. So when the Health Minister, Stephen Kinnock, admitted that the government would need to reprioritise spending from NHS budgets to fund assisted dying, I think it's our duty not to stay stum. We should not be talking it out, but we should be talking about it, because we should ask what health services will be cut. Could palliative care get even less money? And when the Royal College of Psychiatry warned that the requirement for members to sit on AD panels would mean taking them away from overstretched frontline mental health services, our job is not to ignore that, but to ask, would that mean even longer waiting lists for those who are mentally distressed, or a reduction of those at the coalface of suicide prevention, diverted into okaying the state assisting individuals taking their own lives, i.e. not suicide prevention? Such moral dilemmas hint at the fundamental shift in the raison.
No one is suggesting in this House that we should, as she puts it, remain stum. We have had 14 days of debate on this bill.
Such moral dilemmas hint at the fundamental shift in the raison d'etre of medicine required. A systemic shift will be needed to change the NHS constitution to redefine medical treatment. And so I'm grateful to this House that whether it's taken 14 days or not, that we heard the noble Lord Stevens warn that the bill's open-ended clause 41 would be a Trojan horse clause for a fundamental change to the NHS by the back door. Yet amendments have been sneeringly described as trivial, over-cruel, absurd. But having sat through hours and days of the Employment Rights Bill in this place, I thought, therefore, it was my responsibility to look at the bill's impact on workers' rights. And when I asked about two-tier conscience clauses that could leave out junior staff, ancillary workers such as porters and care workers if there's a no system-wide opt-in model, the noble and learned Lord Faulkner rather batted my worries away. However, since my speech on that topic, I've talked to people, prison officers, care staff, and even a real-life porter, who actually thanked me for raising it, all trade union members, by the way, and who said that they changed their mind after the debate because it had made them understand and reconsider the broader impact of the bill. It seems a credit to the committee that it has allowed people outside of this chamber to think about lawmaking beyond sound bites and emotive headlines. My final words, a comment on who we, the alleged filibusterers, are. No disrespect, but we're a bit of a ragbag. Not an organised ideological collective. I'm actually in awe of my temporary comrades in arms who have treated this process with diligence and moral seriousness. It's lazy and insulting to hear people being discussed in the media so disparagingly, or the suggestion that all of the amendments were some conspiratorial sort of plot. That's cynical misinformation and an undignified smear. So, when, probably, or if any version of assisted dying legislation returns here, I hope that all sides will continue to read the small print line by line, and they will stop smearing each other and maybe work together on bringing through safe, workable legislation if we have to have that legislation at all.
My Lord, I